Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Harvard John A. Paulson School of Engineering and Applied Sciences PhD recognition ceremony. Today, we celebrate our brilliant, resilient, and best of all, finished PhD students. I'm John Jarash, the Interim Director of Graduate Education, and I want to say to our graduates how proud I am of each of you. When we get back to campus, the place will feel a little bit smaller without your presence there. But in reality, Seas will grow bigger as you take all that you've learned and discovered out into the world to make it a better place, even as you yourselves continue to learn and grow. It's been an honor to share many of your successes and your struggles during your journeys with Seas, and I look forward to seeing you again in person when circumstances allow. Our program today will start with remarks from Dean Emma Dench of Harvard's Graduate School of Arts and Sciences and from Dean Frank Doyle of Seas. The Dean's remarks will be followed by a reading of our graduates' names by Seas Director of Admissions, Julie Holbrook, and myself. To lead off, it is my great pleasure to introduce the Dean of the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, Emma Dench.
Thank you so much, John, and warmest congratulations to all of you graduating with a PhD across the fields of engineering and applied sciences. I know this isn't the graduation ceremony you envisaged when you embarked on your course, or even as you got near the finish line, and that this isn't the world you expected to graduate into. But one set of qualities that all graduates of the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences share, and that PhD graduates in engineering and applied sciences have in spades, is that you are used to never giving up, to finding workarounds with unexpected advantages, to confronting problems that have no obvious solution. You're used to seeing the flaws in what initially appear to be obvious solutions, and you're used to turning problems on their head, used to completely redefining what the problems are. In that spirit, and as a humble humanist, I offer two observations. The first is the unexpected but enormous joy of our Zoom ceremonies today, and particularly the fact that so many loved ones are able to join us. You are here with us wherever you are in real life. And the second is my wholehearted optimism in contemplating our 2020 PhD graduates. In the tough place that the world is in right now, we need you more than ever. And we are so grateful for all that you have done and all that you will do. So congratulations, and wishing you all health, well-being, and much love in your lives. Well done.
Thank you, Dean Dench, for everything that you and GSAS do for our mutual students. I especially also want to thank GSAS Dean of Student Affairs, Garth McCavanagh, upon his retirement for his decades of devoted service to our students. Next, it is my honor to introduce the John A. Paulson Dean of Seas, Frank Doyle.
Thank you, John. And thanks to my good friend and very distinguished colleague, dear Emma Dench. It's my pleasure to add my welcome, everyone, wherever you may be dialing in from, to the celebration of the doctoral candidates of the Harvard John A. Paulson School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, SEAS. Graduations are traditionally marked by pomp and circumstance, a term coined by William Shakespeare to describe a grand and formal ceremony. In fact, that's the title of the song they play at these events. Well, this year's celebration is unfortunately short on pomp, but this year's graduates certainly are concluding their Harvard careers with an abundance of circumstance. The circumstance of having to abruptly abandon labs, the circumstance of prematurely parting ways with faculty, friends, and lab mates just months before you concluded your program, the circumstance of defending your dissertation over Zoom. And today we gather again on Zoom to celebrate your accomplishments and your resilience in overcoming those extraordinary circumstances. Earning the highest academic degree conferred by Harvard is a singular accomplishment in any year, the result of many, 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 many long hours of hard work, the culmination of an ambitious intellectual journey. The journey each of you traveled was unique, but all share one thing in common. Earning your degree was made possible by the support the encouragement, and the guidance of many people. Everyone who has joined us in this virtual gathering here today, along with many others who cannot be with us. I especially want to acknowledge the C's faculty members. Serving as a faculty advisor to a PhD student and doing it well is demanding work. Faculty have labs to run, courses to teach, grants to manage, papers to write, experiments to perform, and families to attend to. Together, though, we've made advising and mentoring a priority at C's. If ever there was a time when scientific and technological expertise was needed to address society's most pressing problems, this is it. Applying scientific understanding and harnessing technology in an ethical and socially responsible manner are essential to finding a vaccine for COVID-19, to bring our economy back to life, to address climate change, and to every urgent challenge facing our planet today. In other words, graduates, we have a lot of work to do. The role of scientists and engineers has never been more important to society. The potential you have to make a powerful, consequential impact on the world has never been greater. So in closing, let me offer two final thoughts to our PhD recipients. Both deal with opportunity and responsibility. So first, let me ask you to reflect on the role that your advisors played in helping you arrive at this moment, and recognize that now you are in a position to offer similar inspiration and encouragement to younger colleagues. As the next generation of role models and mentors, you have the power, indeed I would say the responsibility, to make a difference in the life of a future engineer or applied scientist. Second, remember that much of Harvard's strength as an institution is thanks to the active engagement of those who came before you. Each of you leaves with the skills and knowledge to make the world a better and more interesting place. And that can be a full-time job in and of itself. But I urge you to stay connected. Remain a part of this extraordinary intellectual community. Continue to find ways to contribute to the teaching and learning and research that happens here. It will advance C's, and I promise it will enrich you. So congratulations to all of our amazing and talented PhDs.
Thank you, Dean Doyle. Next, I'm delighted to introduce C's Director of Graduate Admissions, Julie Holbrook.
Thank you, John. We will now happily begin celebrating the 2020 C's PhD candidates. We will begin with the students earning the degree in applied mathematics. Pui Tung Choi, whose dissertation, Metamaterials, Morphometrics, Morphogenesis, and Mappings, was advised by Professors El Mahadavan and Chris Rycroft. Jordan Hoffman, whose dissertation was advised by Professor Chris Rycroft. Wanyin Kang, whose dissertation, Two Atmospheric General Circulation Problems on Earth and High Obliquity Exoplanets, was advised by Professor Ellie Zipperman. Raphael Jean-Marie Fernand Pastori, whose dissertation, Assume Your Neighbor is Your Equal, Inverse Design and Nanophotonics, was advised by Professor Stephen Johnson and Federico Capasso. This concludes recognizing the doctoral students in applied mathematics.
We now continue with students earning the degree in applied physics. Soren Brandt, whose dissertation, Sensing and Controlling Liquids in Ordered Porous Materials, was advised by Professor Joanna Eisenberg. William Fitzhugh, whose dissertation, Mechanical Effects on the Phase Stability of Ceramic Sulfide Solid Electrolytes, was advised by Professor Jin Lee. Benedict Groover, whose dissertation, About Metalenses and Microfluidic Droplet Makers, Manipulating Matter and Optical Flows for Novel Applications, was advised by Professors David Waits and Donald Ingber. Victoria Huang, whose dissertation, The Prediction and Design of Angle-Independent Structural Colors, was advised by Professor Vinny Manoharan. Keith Krinnick, whose dissertation, Leveraging Integrated Electronics in Neuronal Studies, was advised by Professor Don-Hee Ham. Lisa M. Lee, whose dissertation, Experimental Studies of Pattern Formation in Complex Systems, was advised by Professor Shmuel Rubenstein. Noah A. Rubin, whose dissertation, Metasurface Polarization Optics, was advised by Professor Federico Cabasso. Nabila Tanjim, whose dissertation, Effect of Geometry on Packing and Parking of Colloidal Spheres, was advised by Professor Vinny Manoharan. Robert Daniel Viveros, whose dissertation, Syringe Injectable Mesh Electronics with Minimized Injection Footprint, was advised by Professors Charles Lieber and Don Heham. Tianyang Ye, whose dissertation, CMOS Nanoelectrode Array for High Throughput Electrocardiography, was advised by Professor Hong Kong Park. Kathy T. Zhang, whose dissertation, Hybrid Materials with Actuatable Hierarchical Topography for Multifunctional Surface Design, was advised by Professor Joanna Eisenberg. Tony X. Zhou, whose dissertation, Explore Condensed Matter Physics Using a Quantum Spin Qubit, was advised by Professor Amir Yacobi. Alexander Zhu, whose dissertation, Flat Optics with Metasurfaces and Their Applications, was advised by Professor Federico Capasso. This concludes recognizing the students earning the doctorate in applied physics.
We continue with the students earning the degree in Engineering Sciences, Bioengineering. Ph.D. Adsatamon, whose dissertation, Examination of Calcium's Role in Mammalian Primary Intracellulary Protein Trafficking, was advised by Professor David Clapham. Tyler Brown, whose dissertation, Nanoparticle and Cell-Mediated Brain Delivery in Complex Blood-Brain Barrier Models, was advised by Professor Samir Mitragotri. Nai-Wen Cui, whose dissertation, Droplet-Based Microfluidics for Single Molecule Single Cell Sequencing and Applications, was advised by Professor David Waits. Michael Evans, whose dissertation was advised by Professor Samir Mitragotri. Aaron Lewis Gleiberman, whose dissertation, In Vitro Models for the Pancreatic Islet Using Dynamic Secretion Sensing and Mechanical Stimulation, was advised by Professor Kevin Kit Parker. Maximilian Novak, whose dissertation, Development of and Transport Through a Microfluidic Blood-Brain Barrier, was advised by Professor Samir Mitragotri. Blakely Bussey O'Connor, whose dissertation, Engineering Models of the Placental and Blood-Brain Barrier for Developmental Toxicity Testing, was advised by Professor Kevin Kit Parker. Apurva Sarodi, whose dissertation, Platelet Biomimicry for Treating Vascular Disorders, was advised by Professor Samir Mitragotri. Ting-Yu Shi, whose dissertation, Injectable Ultrasound Responsive Biomaterials as Cancer Vaccines, was advised by Professor David Mooney. Kyle Vining, whose dissertation, Mechanical Resistance of Extracellular Matrix Directs Immune Fate of Bone Marrow Niche, was advised by Professor David Mooney. This concludes recognizing the doctoral students in Engineering Sciences, Bioengineering.
We continue with students earning the degree in computer science. Ken Arnold, whose dissertation, Impacts of Predictive Text on Writing Content, was advised by Professors Krzysztof Gajos and Adam Kalai. Yaroslav Brasiuk, whose dissertation, Randomized Methods in Streaming Algorithms and Error Correction, was advised by Professor Jelani Nelson. Marcus Zachary Cometer, whose dissertation, System I/O Integrity for Deep Learning, was advised by Professor H.T. Kuhn. Sebastian Gehrman, whose dissertation, Human-AI Collaboration for Natural Language Generation with Interpretable Neural Networks, was advised by Professors Barbara Gross and Sasha Rush. David Holland, whose dissertation, Toward Automatic Operating System Ports via Code Generation and Synthesis, was advised by Professors Margot Seltzer and Stephen Chong. Thibaut Aurel, whose dissertation, Mechanisms of Social Interactions, Inference, Experimental Design, and Optimization, was advised by Professors Eduardo Aroldi and David Parks. Yihe Huang, whose dissertation on the design and implementation of high-performance transaction processing in main memory databases, was advised by Professor Eddie Kohler. Bernd Huber, whose dissertation, Interactive AI to Support Human-Human Communication, was advised by Professor Krzysztof Gajos, with additional mentorship from Professor Stuart Schieber. Yoon Kim, whose dissertation, Deep Latent Variable Models of Natural Language, was advised by Professor Sasha Rush, and was the inaugural recipient of the Computer Science Outstanding Ph.D. Dissertation Award. Jack Murtaugh, whose dissertation, Spectral Graph Theoretic Methods for De-randomizing Space-Bounded Computation, was advised by Professor Salil Vaden. Yu Emma Wang, whose dissertation, Performance Analysis for Machine Learning Applications, was advised by Professors David Brooks and Gu Yang Wei. This concludes the students receiving the doctorate in computer science.
We continue with the students earning the degree in engineering sciences, electrical engineering. Hyung-Kwang Lee, whose dissertation, Generalizable and Explainable Deep Learning in Medical Imaging with Small Data, was advised by Professor David Parks. Cheng-Yi Liu, whose dissertation, Toward Ubiquitous Electronics with 2D Materials and 3D Printing, Atomically Thin Optoelectronic Machine Vision Processor in Gigahertz RF Electronics via Direct Ink Writing, was advised by Professor Don-Hee Ham. Linbo Shao, whose dissertation, Acoustic, Microwave, and Optical Devices in Lithium Niobate and Diamond, was advised by Professor Marco Lonkar. This concludes recognizing the doctoral students in electrical engineering.
We now continue with students earning the doctorate in engineering sciences, environmental science, and engineering. Yanina Barrera, whose dissertation, Using LIDAR technology and the STILT model to assess air pollution and improve estimates of greenhouse gas emissions in cities, was advised by Professor Stephen Wofsy. Joshua Badmurgi, whose dissertation, Innovations in Modeling and Statistical Analysis for Greenhouse Gas Flux Monitoring, was advised by Professor Stephen Wofsy. Jen Dai, whose dissertation, Managing Climate Risks with Solar Geoengineering, Tailoring Radiative Forcing, Reducing Ozone Loss, and Understanding Expert Perspectives, was advised by Professor David Keith. Eleni Dovru, whose dissertation, The Contribution of Novel Pathways of Reactive Organic Carbon to Total Particulate Sulfate and Carbon Budget, was advised by Professor Frank Koich. Taylor Jones, whose dissertation, Advances in Environmental Measurement Systems, Remote Sensing of Urban Methane Emissions and Tree Sap Flow Quantification, was advised by Professor Stephen Wofsy. Daniel Varon, whose dissertation, Quantifying Atmospheric Methane Point Sources with High Resolution Satellite Observations, was advised by Professor Daniel Jacob. Alexander Zaitsev, whose dissertation, New Insights into the Atmospheric Role and Fate of Reactive Intermediates from Chemical Ionization Mass Spectrometry, was advised by Professor Frank Koich. This concludes recognizing the students earning the doctorate in environmental science and engineering.
We continue with the students earning the degree in engineering sciences, material science, and mechanical engineering. Jae-Hyun Bae, whose dissertation, Soft Exosuit for Paretic Ankle Assistance in Post-Stroke Gait Rehabilitation, was advised by Professor Connor Walsh. Nikalos Vasios, whose dissertation, Computational Mechanics for the Design, Actuation, and Control of Soft Robots, was advised by Professor Katya Bertoldi. Jing Jia, whose dissertation, Mechanics and Properties of Biopolymer Networks and Cells, was advised by Professor David Waits. Peter A. York, whose dissertation, Millimeter Scale Robotics, Fabrication, Actuation, and Medical Devices, was advised by Professor Robert Wood. This concludes the 2020 SEAS Doctoral Celebration Ceremony. By the power invested in me, hearty congratulations, graduates. It goes without saying that this is not the event that any of us envisioned. However, our confidence in this group of graduates to go out into the world and do amazing things is, if anything, bolstered by the way they handled their final months with us, demonstrating absolute professionalism and creativity and patience and adaptability. SEAS had a hand in teaching the students these skills for sure, but we were beyond proud of how they put these skills into action. As John Krasinski said in the graduation episode of Some Good News, Class of 2020, you are the good in the world. Our thanks to our audience for logging on and cheering for our students, maybe silently, maybe not so silently. Our thanks to the SEAS faculty and staff for making this event possible. And our biggest thanks to our graduates for choosing SEAS all those years ago and for making this a better place where you're having studied here. We so look forward to the time when we can welcome you back to campus with open arms and serve you celebratory cake, and that moment will come. Until then, we wish you and your loved ones good health and good spirits. Congratulations.